Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, bot builders, depending on what time it is for you in the world where you are. I hope you're all having a wonderful Tuesday, or perhaps it's even Wednesday for some of you. For some of you, depending on the magic of time zones. I hope you're all having a lovely day, morning, evening, etc. Welcome to the Botpress Basics Office Hours. If you're new here, my name is Robert. Welcome. If you don't know how these typically go, I'll just run you through what it is that we do here. These are the Basics Office Hours, as the name suggests. So they were for our new to Botpress or low-code enthusiasts, people who are interested in the nitty-gritty kind of things. And then we've also got Developer Office Hours on Thursdays if you're more of a developer-oriented person yourself. That being said, everybody is more than welcome at all of these office hours. So do not fret if you don't match the description. Or as Goose says, thick people like me who are slow to learn. Hey, I'm in that category as well. I've been doing the basics office hours for many months now, and we're all still here. But I like to think that there's something of value for everybody in these streams. So I hope that if you're in the audience today, or if you're watching the recording of this on YouTube later on at some point, I hope you find this useful. So the way that I typically run these streams is I come with an idea of what it is I'd like to share with you today, based usually on conversations I've had over the Discord server over the last couple of days, the last week since the previous live stream. But of course, if you're in the audience and you've got questions, those take precedence. So if you've got a question or you want to be able to debug together, that is please try to derail me. Do not be shy to ask your questions. That is 100% the purpose of what we're doing here today. So I've got the thing that I'm going to share regardless, and then I would love to hear from all of you depending on what it is that you want help solving, or if you just got a question that you'd like to know. That is what we're here to build bots together. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and I'll just share my screen, and we'll dive right into the studio today. We've got kind of an interesting one today. I've noticed a lot of questions, forever, but particularly over the last couple of weeks, about things like structuring knowledge bases, getting better answers from knowledge bases, what to do in terms of improving the ability of your bot to answer certain questions. So we're going to dive into kind of a masterclass on knowledge bases today. I will do some, I guess, knowledge transfer with all of you. And so that's kind of the plan for today. I will begin with the caveat by saying a lot of this is less of a strict science, and a lot more of it is just trial and error. So I would say that the best path forward for improving your bot's ability to do anything related to a knowledge base is really to fine-tune as your bot goes on. What I mean by that is you might find that if a question is asked in a certain way, your bot is able to answer reliably. And if that question changes a little bit, perhaps you run into a problem. And so the goal of this is to teach you two things. One, how to troubleshoot. That's probably the biggest factor. And second, some tips and tricks for maybe avoiding those easy to avoid bugs in the first place. Yeah, Decay, absolutely. These are all recorded and posted to YouTube on our YouTube channel. So you can follow along there. If you're watching the recording of this on YouTube, hello, how are you? Come join us on Discord sometime. We have a great time. All right, so let's dive into knowledge bases. Maybe a quick refresher and maybe just a quick setup, since I think when I post this to YouTube later, I'm going to call this like knowledge base masterclass. So to begin with a knowledge base, the first thing that we'll do is, of course, we'll have to create the knowledge base. We'll start by making the knowledge base over here in the corner using the little add knowledge base icon. So we'll click it, and when you add a new knowledge base, you're prompted with a couple of different things. Now, the first question I get very often about knowledge bases is, what is the difference between all of these different things? Which one is best for me? What is the ideal knowledge base format for the kind of information that I have? It's a fair question, and I think the desire to look for the best solution for what you're doing is a natural one. I think that instinct is natural. That being said, and of course this is going to sound like a cop-out to you, but this is a masterclass after all, is the format that you choose, in theory, should matter less than the format in which you present the information. What I mean by that is a plain text document, so just a document that you type directly in the rich text editor in the studio, with beautifully formatted information, everything is crystal clear, is going to work a lot better than the compendium of mismatched, outdated slog of wild information that you have on your website. And of course, the inverse is also true. If you just copy and paste a bunch of information that's completely unstructured with no sense or heads or tails given to it, as opposed to a website that you own that has a lot of useful information that is laid out in a systematic and clear way, that one's going to win 100% of the time. So the first piece of advice here is, if you're about to ask which is the best knowledge base format for me, ask yourself, in what format does my information currently exist today? So if I've got a bunch of PDFs, what does the information in those PDFs look like? Is it organized in FAQs? Is it organized in just big blocks of text that my bot is going to struggle to differentiate from? So on and so forth. So that is the first piece of information here. Is these choices actually, I would suggest, matter less than the actual way that the information is structured. We have a question in chat. Can I remove Powered by Botpress from the chat box? Yeah, absolutely. If you just go to the dashboard, so not in the studio, but if you hop into the web chat integration setting, you'll be able to just remove that watermark, as it's called. You'll be able to remove it there. You might need to republish and save those changes to see them appear in your web chat integration. So I'm assuming you've got that widget published somewhere on a website. You might need to wait for those changes to propagate, but you can just go ahead and remove that. That is not a paid feature. I must stress this point. You do not need to pay to remove that. Wink, wink, nod, nod, nudge, nudge. If you're wondering, I've got peppermint tea today. This is not coffee. Some of you seem to get riled up in the YouTube comments of these videos, and to that I say, it's 3 p.m. I like a hot beverage. All right, so let's dive into some of these formats. Let's talk about this. I think the next question that I get very often is, what is the difference between a website knowledge base, and search the web? It's a fair question, again, and so let's dive into some of those differences now. So website here, if you click into adding a website knowledge base, you'll be prompted with this menu. So this menu will ask you to place a domain, in other words, your website, and your bot will be able to do what's called discover pages and ask you if that's what you want to index. So you've got two options. If we read this menu, we see your chatbot will answer questions from the content found on a website or specific web pages. So you've got two choices here. My preference is the easy way, obviously. So I usually just pick a website, place the root domain, and just discover the pages here. So if we go ahead and discover those pages, my bot will look on the internet and then find all of the pages on the Botpress website. That's what I'm using as my example here. So you can see here, I've got 120 pages of documentation, 200 pages on our blog, and then a couple of pages elsewhere that make up the Botpress website at a total of 410 pages. If I go ahead and hit add pages, my bot will index these, vectorize them, which we'll talk about in a sec, but we must place that on hold for now. But just remember that, keep that in the back of your mind. But that's what's happening to a website source. I'm going to cancel this. I'm not going to go ahead with that for now because I want to talk about the differences between that and searching the web. Let's talk about searching the web. When I click into that one, we'll see here that we've got a couple of different options. One of these looks alarmingly similar to the one that we just looked at. In other words, websites to search on here asks for a root domain. It asks for botpress.com. I think this generates some questions. So this is typically where people look at these two menus and they say, well, how are these two things different? Let us discuss. So the first point to note here is that when you add a website knowledge base, in other words, you go through the process of indexing those web pages and then vectorizing those pages, that takes a snapshot of your website at a certain moment in time. In other words, if I index my website today and then I return back to my bot 3 weeks later, my website will look inside that bot's knowledge base as it did 3 weeks ago. This is a great option if you don't think that you're going to make any important changes to your website, or you don't currently plan on adding any new information that you want your bot to have access to. You can, of course, re-index the page as you like, but that means just going into your bot settings, deleting the old one, and then including the new one. That's totally possible, not a problem there at all, but that's a manual process. Your other option is to search the web. In other words, if you were to ask your bot or ask an employee or a member of your team or a customer to just Google the information they're looking for, this is what they would do. So in other words, you just type in botpress.com here, and your bot will search for the answer to a given question on all of the pages on this domain. So it'll search for the answer to a question on botpress.com. The difference here is that the search is performed on the website as it exists at a moment in time. So if I create this knowledge base today, and then 3 weeks from now, someone asks my bot a question, and then in that 3-week period, I've added some pages to my website. In theory, my new bot 3 weeks from now should be able to have access to that new information. So where the indexed file wouldn't, because these files aren't indexed and it's performing a search in real time when a question is asked, it'll be able to find that information there. So that's the first difference between these two knowledge bases. We've got search the web, and then we've got the indexed file. You can, of course, combine them. So let's say I wanted to have both of them. You can do that as well. So you can have the indexed one, and you can search the web, for example, just on Google. You can search on the entire web. Like a little pro tip here, or a tip that I like to do a lot, is I will index the page that I'm looking for example, botpress.com. But as somebody who works at Botpress, I know that there's a lot of information about Botpress written on pages that are not on botpress.com. So there's lots of websites, partners, customers, etc., that mention Botpress that have useful information that don't exist on our root domain. And maybe I don't want to index those because I don't want to index like 100 different websites. I, of course, want to optimize my vector storage. We'll talk about vectors in a sec. But I want my bot to have access to that information just in case. Here's what I would do. So I would start by indexing my website, botpress.com, and then I would add a search the web knowledge base, and I would search on the entire web except for botpress.com because we've already indexed it, right? So we don't need to do that twice. So we're telling our bot, try to find the answer on botpress.com, and you can either augment it, or if you don't find an answer there, you can look on other websites for information related to this question. So a lot of the time, the question is typically formulated in a way that says, which knowledge base format is better for me or my website or whatever the case may be. And I truly think the answer is one, well, it depends, which is kind of a cop-out answer. And then maybe the real answer here is both. So the idea is maybe you want to augment it with information that's available in other places, but you want the root cause or the root core of the answer to come from your website's domain. So that's how I would set that up. That's how I would begin this here. And I hope that answers your question. Perhaps you in the future watching this video will find that helpful. Ashwin has a question about chunking. So the idea is that after uploading a file to a KB, the chunk of data is getting separated at random places. This is affecting the way that the KB answers queries because, of course, the chunks are separated. Why does this happen? Is there any workaround for this? So, okay, Ashwin, you ask a good question. I will answer. You ask 3 questions. The first one is, am I making sense? Yes, you are making a lot of sense. Absolutely. This is actually very relevant, so this is a great question. Let's discuss. If you are like me, and when you first started working in like machine learning years ago, you heard the term chunking, and you might. It sounds a lot like a word that we use as children over here in North America to mean, your lunch makes a second appearance. That's not what this means. I must confirm for all of you. But let's take a look at what chunking is. I'll use a PDF that I often use as an example knowledge base here, and we'll take a look at the chunks in a sec. So Ashwin asks, why does my file chunk in random places? It seems to be affecting the quality of my answers. And then the information that's between separators, the KB is referencing, is left out. So to begin answering this question, we have to talk about how does a bot know things? How can you tell your chatbot, Ashwin, and just to be clear, I'm going to give a very long-winded answer because I want to make sure that everybody in the audience and watching this later on YouTube, we're all on the same page about what these questions mean. So the first thing we have to start with is, how does your bot know something? How does a chatbot that you put on your website know anything? The answer to that is, technically bots don't really know anything, but they can do a good job of pretending like they know something, or I'm sure you've heard this, that large language models are just really good at predicting the next word that will come in a series of words, or the next token that will appear in a series of tokens. They're really good at that, and it appears like they're answering questions. So the way that this works, and this relates to what we mentioned earlier about vectorizing information, is that when you upload a file in the olden days, prior to vectorizing and retrieval augmented generation, which we'll talk about in a sec, your bot would just look for words that matched. So in other words, if you've ever had the terrible experience of shopping on an old website where if you didn't type in the word of or the product name that you're looking for precisely, and the words didn't match, or you typed it in a different way, then the search would fail, and you would be under the assumption that that store that you were shopping on doesn't offer the product which you are looking for. That is the old way of answering questions. So in other words, your bot would kind of just memorize what information it had access to, and if we didn't have a way of maybe adjusting for things like typos or phrasing differences, then your bot wouldn't know anything. Fast forward a couple of years, and then we have something called NLU, Natural Language Understanding, which is a step towards accounting for things like phrasing differences, typos, etc. And then fast forward to today, and your bot is able to take a knowledge base, digest it or understand it, turn it into things that it knows, and then find information there accordingly. So in other words, the process there is it takes the information on your website or a PDF, which is really just a bunch of text, and then turns it into chunks, or in other words, small segments of information that it can then treat as something like a number in order to find the next token that will appear. Now, a lot of that we don't really need to care about because a lot of that is irrelevant to what most of you are doing, which is building bots. What Ashwin is asking, and since we've just uploaded a PDF, we can see these are the chunks here. In other words, everything that's separated between these lines is a chunk. So you've got one chunk, another chunk, etc. The purpose of this is to make your bot able to answer those questions, to make your bot perform that really fast search through all of this book without having to look for exact word matches or that kind of really frustrating online shopping experience of yore. Now, the question that Ashwin asks is, sometimes the arbitrary separation between these chunks makes it so that the bot is unable to catch a link, for example, between the sentence here, and you can see here that the sentence is cut off mid-chunk into the next one. And what ends up happening is the answer of the bot suffer in that case. Now, why does this happen? We chunk in these arbitrary places so that your bot is able to perform RAG on these questions and on these knowledge bases in an efficient way. The current question, is there any workaround for this? Unfortunately, Ashwin, I'm sorry to make you sit through that long-winded explanation, but we don't currently offer a way to customize this chunking in a way that I think will solve the problem that you're looking for. Now, that being said, I think this is another pretty common question, is that because of the chunking process on Botpress, sometimes the questions that I'm asking to my bot kind of suffer or the quality of the answers deteriorates. Here's a couple of ways how we would solve this. So first thing you say here is, this is affecting the way the KB answers my queries. Sometimes a part of the answer that's not in between the separators that the KB is referencing is left out. So the first thing I would say, Ashwin, is how do you know this? How do you know that the bot is providing insufficient answers to your questions? The reason I'm asking that is because if you have access to the questions and the answers that your bot is giving, and you can see that the answers are inefficient or they're incorrect in some way, then we can account for that. We can maybe try fixing that in the way that the knowledge base is set up. I see you typing, so I'll take a sip here. I'll take a well-timed sip here. So we continue onwards. But that's the process of chunking. I check the index from answer and find the KB reference. Yes, okay, good. But are you asking these questions in the emulator, or are you looking at the conversation history of a conversation that's happened on your bot? Okay, the emulator. I see. So in that case, I would suggest a couple of different things. The first is that since we can't get around this chunking problem, since we don't currently offer a way to customize the size of the chunks, etc., what I would suggest is, first off, dead simple, and this tip applies to pretty much anybody working with a knowledge base. You can just open up a rich text document, and then pop some questions and answers in here. So for example, if the question you're asking is what color is the soup, and you've found that the answer that you're getting from the current chunked process is not suiting, it's not what you'd like it to be, you can augment it by just placing it here. And this is like the dead simplest way to manage this. Is rich text also chunked? It's a good question. I don't know, because we don't float it here at the front end in this way. But in any case, the chunks should always be, there is rarely a situation in which the length of the answer you've given crosses over a chunk. So this should solve this problem. Is rich text acting like a prompt? It's not acting like a prompt. It's just another piece of information that your bot has access to. Actually, Ashwin, you bring up a good point. I wonder if this is chunked in a way that will potentially lead to the same thing. The reason I bring this up as a solution is because this is what I use behind the scenes to make it work. So this is what has worked for me in my experience. So I've never run into the chunking problem when augmenting answers with a rich text knowledge base. I guess based on testing, I should solve it for individual problems. I mean, I think that's like the right answer, but I think I want to give you, tangible steps that you can follow. So for example, I'll just say something here like the soup is blue with a hint of green. Can you do the same with a table with Q&A? So Manny asks a good question, which is the difference here between structured and unstructured data. What is structured data? Let's say, for example, you are listing apartments, and apartment A costs $500 and apartment B costs $750. Then apartment A can never cost the same as apartment B. They are different apartments. The structure in that case is very important. In other words, it's really important that your bot doesn't mix up those two things. So on the topic of structured data, you may have noticed one of the options for a knowledge base is table knowledge bases. So you can use a Botpress table as a source of knowledge. If I click into this one, we'll see immediately that I don't actually have a table. So I must create one before using this as a knowledge base. So we can go ahead and do this. I'll call this apartments. And then just to demonstrate, I'll show you here what this looks like. So we'll continue with this apartment example. We'll say apartment A and apartment B, as well as their prices. And of course, the idea here is that you'll have a lot more than these. So we pop over here, we add new tables, and then all of a sudden our knowledge base now includes these columns that we've searched as well. So Mandy asks, can you do the same with a table with Q&A? So in other words, what we might look at is doing something like FAQs, and then you might do question, and you might do answer. This is also perfectly valid. So the question might be like, what color is the soup? And we might just put the exact same answer. So the soup is blue with a hint of green. In my experience, so what Manny is asking here is, since we're providing an FAQ, which is in a way structured data, can we just provide it in this way such that our bot is able to look through these answers and find the answer here? In my experience, this works fine until the questions start looking similar to each other. And as your bot performs a semantic search on this knowledge base, it might get those answers mixed up. Now, that being said, if you've got a situation where the questions are clearly differentiated from each other, or even better, you go in and clean up the questions yourself so that you're sure that there's never gonna be a problem, then I think this works perfectly fine. So I think that's absolutely a way that you could solve this problem. So you're telling your bot, here's the right question, here's the right answer. I noticed tables are also chunked as 5 or 6 rows each. Yeah, exactly. So that depends on the size of the information that's contained in each row, or record rather. But the idea here is that the only filter that matters is the horizontal one. So in other words, the information in each unique record shouldn't matter for the one that follows it. So it doesn't matter that the chunking happens at the row level, because that's where the information is stored. So in other words, the price of apartment B is not relevant to the price of apartment A, because we have structured data. There's a video on a YouTube channel about using structured data versus unstructured data, which if you're watching this in the future or you're interested in this topic, you might also find useful. But that's what is going on there. The nice thing about using an FAQ table, for example, is that you can have this be automatically updated to reflect questions your bot couldn't answer. Yeah, as Ashwin says, if I ask info in a single column, it chokes a bit. That's because bots are not really made to answer the questions that exist in a column. We consider the record to be the important unit of information, because the way that we designed this was for things like order info or user record number or user information, etc. The nice thing about performing this kind of augmentation Manny's way, as Manny suggests, is that you can account for questions automatically that your bot couldn't answer. So I've shown this before, but I'll show this again here. And I'll show you how you can automatically do that. So let's say our bot is asked a question, and then our bot doesn't know the answer, and I want to wake up in the morning and I want to be able to look at all those unanswered questions. There's a video on our YouTube channel called Save Unanswered Questions, but I'll also just set this up live in case you want to just continue watching this. So for example, let's say I'll turn this off here and I'll ask my user, what is your question? And let's say I want to answer questions from a knowledge base, and I'll save this to a variable called user question. Now, I want my bot to be able to answer this question, but if my bot can't answer this question, well, I want to be able to account for that in some way. So I'm going to place the condition over here. I'll use the condition turn.knowledgeagent.answer. And of course, I'm using the exclamation mark at the beginning to indicate that this is a negation. So in other words, the label here was if no answer from KB. So if my bot is unable to generate an answer, take this path, go down this path at some point and do something else. And that's when we'll be able to add a question to that table. And of course, if this condition doesn't trigger, we will be able to just continue on. So hope that answer was helpful. This all feels a bit abstract at the moment, so I'm going to finish this up and then we can test this out. We can see how this goes live. I'll finish this up by placing an insert record card here, have an FAQ table. Of course, the question is going to be workflow.userQuestion, and the answer should be, there should be no answer. But let's try this out. Okay, let's clean up our knowledge bases. I'm going to go ahead and remove some of these. I'll delete all of these. And the only knowledge base I want is a rich text that says something like the tiger is orange. So this is the only information my bot currently has access to. So if I were to ask it something like, hello, who is Jane Fonda? Of course, I don't have an answer to this. So now let's go back to our FAQs table and we'll see the question here. So the idea here is on the topic of improving knowledge base answers, I think that the step that everybody should be doing all the time is understanding what kind of questions does my bot not have an answer to? What kind of questions is my bot unable to answer such that it doesn't provide a response and therefore not a useful conversation for my user? Then what I would do is in the morning, I would pop into my table here and just populate these answers. So understand, okay, what are my users asking? And then how can I provide that information to them better? You can provide the answer here in the way that Manny is suggesting, or you can pop that entire question here. So you can say something like, question, who is Jane Fonda, and then answer, etc. Of course, if you were using a search the web knowledge base, your bot would have known who Jane Fonda was. Or if your bot was me, your bot would have known who Jane Fonda was. But the idea here is that your bot is not always going to be asking, or your users won't always be asking questions that your bot doesn't have access to the answer for. All right. Let's continue this idea of improving these kinds of bots over time, but I'm going to pause because I have a user question. Let's say I'm building two bots, one for customers, one for the client. In the morning, can I make sure the bot is prompted to ask questions to the client? Are there any new cars today? Can the bot take the information from the client, prompt an upload of the document and information on when to view the car, and update it on KB? I think I understand your question, Matt Scott 1919. I think what you're looking for is the ability to automatically update the bot's knowledge base based on questions that have been asked through the day. Currently, the process for this is not automated. You would do this manually. I would recommend doing this manually because your bot's knowledge base is kind of its brain, and uploading things to that brain in a way that is programmatic might lead to problems. So I would always prefer to have manual control over the things your bot knows to avoid situations like your chatbot ends up in the news for making something up. That being said, we know the ability to dynamically update knowledge bases based on things like changing information is something that something that users want, and so it's something that we're currently in the process of building out. But I would still, even once that's live, recommend, as you say in chat, automated with an employee watching over this. So when you ask, can the bot take the information from the client, prompt an upload of the document? I would say, instead of prompting an upload of the document, why not just save it in tables like this? So in other words, you're already collecting information from all of your users, and you should be storing all of the relevant information in variables. Things like what kinds of answers do they get? What kinds of questions do they have? So what is their name, email, etc. And then you can save all of that information in a table and then use this to kind of upload the video. Or sorry, not upload the video, improve the knowledge base over time. So at the end of the day, for example, once your bot has been live for a couple of days, you'll have a lot of information about what kind of questions your users are asking, etc. And then your employee, so on, will be able to improve the knowledge base based on those questions. Can you guys make a video tutorial or future live stream on table function using execute code? That seems to be the current solution to column searches. Yeah, absolutely, Ashwin. So I would say two things. The first is like, if we are currently in the process of improving something and there are some workarounds, I tend not to make videos about those workarounds in the meantime. But know that we are currently in the process of improving some of these features so you can perform more relevant searches on the information that exists inside of your tables, as we say. Yes. So that's the story on knowledge bases. Matt says, we're working with live active clients. This sort of automation would be helpful. I think the only way this could work for us is to cast an eye to improve our questions to the clients. Yeah, I think so. Matt Scott 1919, you bring up a good point, and I think the reality of creating all of this stuff is if you're looking for a bot that will produce answers no matter what, Botpress is not the solution for you. Botpress is not the solution if you want a bot that will make up answers regardless of whether or not they're truthful. And the reason for that is we are in the business of providing powerful tools at your hands without having to worry about putting up the guardrails yourself. And I say this because we've seen recently that a lot of bots have ended up in the news because they've made things up or they've gone against policy, so on and so forth. So there are two best practices that we always recommend either to that we always recommend to either partners or clients that are using Botpress directly. The first is we perform things behind the scenes. So before asking a question to a model's API, we perform tasks behind the scenes to ensure that your bot doesn't make up an answer. It won't treat a hallucination as an answer. That is currently one of the biggest risks we see to businesses, is that if your bot is treating a hallucination as a real answer, of course, your bot has no way of knowing. Models are really good, as I said at the beginning of this stream, at predicting the next word that will come. They are very bad at determining whether or not that answer is truthful. The best people that are best positioned to determine if an answer is truthful are the employees of a given business. And that's why we always recommend having either a project owner or a team of people that are responsible for ensuring that a chatbot doesn't go off the rails and make up policies that don't exist. Again, if you're looking for something that will hallucinate answers, there are plenty of solutions on the internet and plenty of different chatbots you can engage with that will make up answers to questions that aren't real. But of course, nobody wants that. We want this to work. We want this to work properly. And we've found that most people are happy to do a couple of extra steps of setup or maintenance in order to make sure that the bot actually works. It actually answers question in a way that is truthful. I say all of this because automating, there's always like a delicate balance between what we can allow your bot to do automatically and what we encourage you and your partners and clients, etc., to do with a strong eye of supervision. Currently, my favorite workflow for this is quite literally what I demonstrated over here. So understanding what kind of questions your users are asking, and then providing your bot with the answers you want it to give and nothing else. A question I get very often about knowledge bases is that I know that the answer is written in my knowledge base, but my bot still doesn't provide an answer. Why is that? And that is almost 100% of the time, because even though you think the answer is written in your knowledge base in a way that is super clear and is very concise, your bot Botpress is not confident enough that your bot was able to produce an answer that won't land your business in the news, is like the most casual way that I can put this. So we will always err on the side of protecting the reputation of your business. Now, that being said, we know that's not always the case, and we are always looking for ways to improve this. And so currently, the way that I like to improve this is to just do it manually, to teach my bot, these are the questions you might be receiving, and these are the kinds of questions, the kind of answers that I'd like you to give. The best way to do that, in my experience, like I showed earlier, is just have a list of frequently asked questions and then copy those things verbatim here or in a way that is very approachable. If the answer to a certain question is locked behind 17 paragraphs of context and sentences that are unrelated, your bot will struggle to find that answer. But if the question and answer are clearly laid out in this way, then your bot will be able to confidently find that answer and know that it won't land your business in the news, as we say, which is not what we want. It's not what any of us want. Well, hopefully all of your businesses end up in the news, but for a good way. I have a project in Stack. I want to use Botpress to consume my API and do things like data. I'd like to teach him. Can you do a video with this? Interesting question, DXD. Can I ask you to maybe share some more information in a post like on the help channel? I'm curious about the project and what it is you'd like to accomplish are. So the best thing for me in this case would be, just tell me what it is you'd like to accomplish over in the help channel. If anyone is in the audience or wondering, I always want to know what kinds of videos you guys want to watch and what you would find helpful. So don't be shy to let me know. Is there a way to clear the bot cache? Sometimes it sticks to a wrong answer from a cache instead of searching the KB. Is it same as clearing the browser cache? Ooh, this is an excellent question. I'm going to demonstrate a couple of things for all of us to make heads or tails of Ashwin's question. So I will begin again with my simple rich text knowledge base with the simple sentence, the tiger is blue. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn that off. And I just want to answer questions on my start node. So over here, I'm going to ask my bot, what color is the tiger? And that did not work. Why did that not work? We refresh and we carry on. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, that's hello. What is your question? I'll turn this off here. Dun, dun, dun. All right, love that for me. While I debug this, a quick, relatively simple question. When I'm deploying my bot, I try using a different avatar URL, but it won't load any, just an icon. Insane, you're using a URL to load the icon of your bot. Is it, what is the file extension? Is it a .png? Where is it hosted? Usually this is a problem caused by it's not publicly hosted somewhere. So if it's like a Google Drive, for instance, your bot won't have access to it. We recommend things like an S3 bucket. That's usually what I use for like a public S3 bucket is typically what I use for that kind of thing. But that's typically the cause of problems with like an icon not showing up. I truly wonder why this would not be working for me. But in any case, I will answer Ashwin's question. If your bot receives two of the same question in a row, or if your bot receives very similar questions to each other that can be answered using the same set of information, we allow your bot, we encourage your bot to remember that in order to save you money. So in other words, we save those responses in a cache. And then if you ask the same question where that information is relevant again, we're not going to run the model one more time because that will cost you more money. So in other words, your bot will perform the same question. Is it the same as clearing the browser cache? No, because I'm pretty sure that it's cached on our end, not on your end. So you're saying like sometimes it sticks to a wrong answer from the cache instead of searching the knowledge base again. This won't happen in production. It happens in the emulator because it's treating you as one user, but it won't happen in production to like live users. So after a while, the cache is flushed. I don't think there's currently a way to manually flush it, which I think is what you're looking for. I tried Google Graphics or fonts, but I'll try to manage it a bit more. I would say, Insane, if you're, it really should be an image. So if you're not using like a .png or a .jpeg, your bot won't treat it as an image. Yeah. Zane Bain, I have looped conversation, not able and able to answer from KB. When it comes to the second time, not able to answer node, I can't find an answer in the knowledge base. When I ask the same answer the first time, he's able to answer. Zane Bain, I'm not sure that I understand the question. I think there are a couple of, I don't quite understand what it is that you've written here. So maybe the best way would be to just create a post in help and maybe show a photo of the loop that you've set up here. That way we'll be able to help you debug better. And Insane, yeah, as Ashwin says, if you can share the image URL, that might help us also determine the cause of this. But if you're curious, there are two options. Another like hacky workaround for this is to just upload an image directly to your Botpress bot. When you upload an image here, you'll get a URL that you will be able to use as the icon for your bot. I think this is what I show in an example on one of our live streams or videos. So for example, I've just uploaded this image. You then get an image from an S3 bucket ending in a PNG, and this is the URL that I would use if I wanted this image to show as my bot's icon. That's what I would do here. My knowledge bases seem to is refusing to do things for me today, which is not. I don't love this. Well, we can continue this another time. But this is so let's recap what it is that we've talked about today. We've talked about the differences between these various knowledge base sources, ways to optimize your bot's ability to provide answers, and how to improve those answers over time. In the last couple of minutes of this stream, I'm just going to recap, maybe do like a TLDR or like a wrap-up summary here. So if you're in the audience and you've got some questions, you've got some final questions that you want to ask, speak now or forever hold your bot building piece. I'm just going to just wrap this up very quickly. So the main takeaway for information in a knowledge base is even if you think it's structured very clearly, there's always ways to improve that structure, depending on the format that you've got it in. And I think the simplest workaround for improving your bot's answers is including some information in a rich text file, for example, just a simple questions and answers difference. Kinetics asks, sorry if it's answered already, but can you show how to format date time entered? Oh yeah, I can. Here, let's test this out over here. Okay, let's capture a date time from our user. What date? And we'll save this in user date. And just to show, I'll place this over here and I'll send that variable back again, just to show what we're beginning with and what it is that Kinetics wants to achieve. I'll turn off knowledge answering. So let's say, what is the current date? March 5th. 2024. So there's a lot of different things here. I think what Kinetics is asking is I end up with this large ISO format. How do I turn this into something else? What I would begin with is ask, off the top of my head, I don't actually know, but I would say how to translate ISO format into day or date. You might use an AI task for this. So for example, if this information is stored in a variable, then I would say you could pass this through an AI task, extract, for example, the date. You could use an execute code card for this as well. So for instance, you might say something like extract the day and month from a date in ISO format. And if we hit enter, we've got some code for this as well. AI task go burr. Yeah, Ashwin's right. I think the AI task might be the easiest way to do this. But also there's always a way to do this in code as well. And then you could save this to a variable that you send later. The ISO format is to ensure standardization across your bot's answers and conversations and whatnot. But kinetics, that's how I would begin to do that. Otherwise, you could set up also an AI task for this. So you might say something like isolate the day and month from the ISO format date provided. Actually, let's see if this works. And let's save this to a variable called user date clean. This might not work, and then we would have to finagle this. We love to finagle. I might also say save the answer to a string variable called workflow.userDateClean. Okay, let's try that again. Hi, March 5th, 2024. And then here we see that the answer in userDateClean is 2024-03-05. Maybe I can change that AI task. Extract the day and month in natural language. Try that one more time. And maybe we'll send that variable as well. You've asked a great question, Kinetics, and now I've gone down the rabbit hole. Now let's do March 6th. Yeah, so then we've got 06 March, and then you can configure the prompt based on how you want the date to be extracted, etc. Using S3 bucket seems to solve it. Yeah, so S3 is just because those are publicly available and your bot will be able to find that icon, no problem. You can use images saved in S3 and Botpress. Yeah, so there are two different things. The first is they're asking specifically for the icon. So the icon of your bot, you could just upload a URL, it's hosted publicly. Otherwise, if you're uploading an image to Botpress using one of these image cards, it'll save it to an S3 bucket and then you can send the image there as well. DXD, that answers your question. And then I see a question from Absorbing Jet. Who is the president of company X? Yeah. As Carolyn suggests, so Absorbing Jet, what you're looking for is technically a piece of structured information. So the idea here is that the president of the company doesn't change. So as Carolyn says, company rosters are a great use case for tables. So in other words, you could put something like, here, let's call this roster, and then you might have something like role and name. And then a new record might indicate to your users that the president is me. It's me. And then if you were to ask this, who is the president, your bot won't be able to, your bot should understand that the president only refers to this name and not any of the names that will appear below. All right, we are just approaching the end of today's stream, so I might begin to wrap up here unless anybody has any final questions. Thank you for the lively discussion today. I hope that you found this useful. I hope that you all have great success with your knowledge bases going forward. If you are watching this in the future on YouTube, hey, come join us on Discord sometime. It's a great time. As always, I would suggest if you have further questions, do post them in the help channel with as much of your detail as possible as you can provide, because that helps us answer you faster and better. Can Botpress use SQL or MongoDB database? Use a table. Use a Botpress table. I'll give you a cheeky answer at the end of today's stream. I would challenge you to use a Botpress database, and if you're finding limitations, let me know. Thank you all for coming. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Tuesdays or Wednesdays or evening. And then I will see you all either at Patrick's stream on Thursday or at my next stream Wednesday or Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next week. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye. Happy bot building.